Good morning and welcome to another edition of Council Matters. I'm Nick Fitzgerald, and today I've been describing it as two great Dubliners, one great show, and that's why I'm delighted to welcome our guest in the studio, Councillor Deirdre Heney. Deirdre, welcome to not only to Dublin City FM and Council Matters, but also to East Wall as well.
Good morning, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me to come along.
Yep. You're a Northsider.
I am indeed.
Yes. How important is that to you in the overall scheme of things? Because to me, when I say to people abroad, I'm not Irish, I'm a Dubliner. As I say, how much of the roots are within Deirdre Heney that we know of?
Well, look at the north side versus the south side argument is nearly like, the argument between Dublin and Kerry footballers. It's deep rooted, but we do love each other nonetheless. I have some very, very good friends on the south side, and indeed I have some very, very good friends who are Kerry supporters. Yeah. But I was, born and reared on the north side of the city. I went to school, to an all-Irish school on Moby Road, Cllr. I lived in Drumcondra, and latterly, when I bought my own house, I bought on Collins Avenue East in Cllr. I love being a Dub. I'm very proud of my roots. My father and his father before him were Dubs. My mother was a Dub. Her parents were from Carlow and Wexford. Father and mother were grandfather and grandmother on my mother's side were from Carlow and Wexford. But she was a shopkeeper and a real true Dub, and just really ingrained in us as kids to look after our neighbours. I'm the youngest of a family of 8, and she ingrained in us, as did my dad, to look after our family and look after our neighbours and be fair. Yeah. And if you were fair, you could expect people to be fair back to you.
Were you born in the Rotunda?
I was not born in the Rotunda.
Not Holles Street.
I was not born in the Rotunda or Holles Street. I was born in Nurse Hickey's, which is on the Old Cabra Road. That's where I was born, Nurse Hickey's in the Old Cabra Road.
Ah, there you go. Now, I'm interested to see that you went to CouncilMatters. Were you on the debating team? Because when I was at secondary school, I was no use at any of that stuff, but I used to go to the debates, mainly because we used to go to the girls' schools. And what I always remember is CouncilMatters, because I think you were in Eccles Street in those days.
Well, I wasn't.
No,
I was never in
they
Eccles
had
Street.
the prettiest girls, so I always went to their debating ones. They weren't necessarily the best debaters, but they were the best to look at.
My older sister, when she started CouncilMatters, she had her first 6 months, I think, in Eccles Street. But no, when I started CouncilMatters, it was on Moby Road, and I was more involved in organising events as opposed to being involved in the debating society. We used to get involved with Cllr, the boys' school in Parnell Square, and CouncilMatters and Cllr used to put Ceol Cuirmacha ar fáil. So we used to be a gwint an tan of us, the Ceol Cuirmacha, and we used to have Céilís on Friday nights in Cllr. So the girls in CouncilMatters had great pals with the lads in Cllr. And to this day, might I add, Mike, there's still a group of us. We're from all over the city, because the girls who used to go to CouncilMatters weren't just Northsiders, and the lads in Cllr weren't just Northsiders. They came from all over Dublin, so we have a kind of a camaraderie amongst ourselves, and it's all really based around the Irish language and GAA, particularly Dublin football.
Yes, I was going to say that. People don't know this about you, but I do. I would say in many respects you'd be much more nationalist than me because of the Gaelga, because of the GAA. Where did the GAA come about? Does that go back a long way?
No, it goes back to CouncilMatters and Clontarf. My father wasn't into GAA at all. He used to say that we should, concentrate more on giving all of the lads a football on the pitch. But no, it was really ingrained in me, I think, from my experience in CouncilMatters and in the Clontarf mix. There was a great group of people there, and my own father and mother were very proud people, and they were very proud of the Irish language. And I think the connection between the GAA and the Irish language is a very, very strong connection, and it's one about being proud of your roots and proud of your nationality, proud of your nationalism. And I suppose that's where it came from, Mike.
Okay. An interesting one, because you and I come from different generations, and in my generation you tended to be either or. You either were GAA or you tended to be the round ball game, or you were rugby, which meant you went to a better class of school. Does your interest in the GAA preclude you taking an interest in the FAI and the rugby, or are you a sporty sort?
Absolutely not. I have to say I am a big Roy Keane fan.
What is it about women and Roy Keane?
Well, Roy Keane to me is a man who signifies hard work. He symbolises hard work. He just keeps going. And from a guy who's come from a very ordinary background with very few connections, if any, and his family just work really, really hard. And he has stuck with it, and he is a determined man, and I have great admiration for him. I remember going to see him in Lansdowne Road, and if we used to be on the upper tier, and if you would look down, you'd see Roy Keane, and he would really control 4 players at all times on the pitch, and he was organising the game, and he really, really did control what was happening on the pitch, and I have huge admiration for him. And I hope someday to see him succeed as manager of our international team. I have great regard for that man.
No, it's interesting you should say that, because you're not the first Northside female who has sung the praises of Roy Keane, but blokes don't tend to, and I would suggest, if you were, particularly blokes of my generation, if you were to ask which Irish footballer, if we could transfer the skills, we'd all be lining up to be Liam Brady. He was just elegance personified.
Well, I don't have as much experience with Liam Brady, but certainly the thing that I like about Roy Keane, it's not so much his footballing ability, even though that is quite an achievement on its own, but it's the man, and it's the way he can, I suppose, withstand all of the pressure. He's the assistant at the moment. He's not the manager, but yet all of the focus zones in on Roy Keane, and I think he's playing a blinder now, I have to say. And he does expect excellence, and that really does put pressure on the team and on the lads, and that's good. We need to be put under pressure to achieve the best that we can out of life. And I just see him, on a continuing basis, he's always being targeted, and I think, to have survived that and still be so popular is an achievement in itself, and I greatly admire him.
I don't know what it is, Deirdre, but I get
plus he is a very handsome man. You know?
I tended to be attracted to the flawed genius like George Best and Paul McGrath.
Paul McGrath.
Paul McGrath was magnificent.
But Paul was a fantastic footballer.
Were you a player? Because I've got one of my neighbours, and her name is Doris McGowan, lovely woman up there in Clontarf, and Doris won an All-Ireland medal in camogie, and she showed me the photograph when she won it, and I thought, Doris, you were the enforcer. Were you a player yourself?
No, unfortunately, I wasn't. My mum used to think it was too dangerous for me to play hurling or to play camogie in Sculcatrina. I did start playing it in first year, but I stuck more with basketball going up through the years in school. But my niece and my nephew Alva and Keane, they're very, very keen. Certainly Alva is. She's a very keen camogie player. She's a member of St Vincent's GAA club, and I would have encouraged my nephew and my niece to get involved in GAA, because I know the benefits that are there for people who are involved in the organisation that is the GAA. It's a very, very positive community setup, and it's something that I feel very, very proud of, that I could encourage my family to get involved in playing GAA. But I absolutely love to go to a hurling match, to get as close to the pitch as I possibly can, because the dedication.
What would you prefer, the Amaniacht or the Pella?
I think I think, if I'm honest, the Amaniacht, because the discipline involved, in lads and young women going out onto the pitch for their county is just it's just a beautiful thing to see, that they just want to win for their county. There's no financial gain for them. They're doing it for the love of the sport, but for the love of their county. And that's a very, very, I think, encouraging sport to watch. That there's just such dedication there, and there's great team spirit involved in it. And it's certainly very, very good for young people to have them out engaging in that kind of activity rather than doing other things that wouldn't involve being outdoors.
No, I must admit, when I was at school, I used to play the ammoniac. I wasn't terrific at the football because I was a skinny kid, and that's why I always admired the skill that's involved in that. Moving on then, Deirdre, the other bit that most people would not know about you is canines. I mean, you have a love of dogs. Tell me all about that. Well, I know about it. Tell everybody else all about it. How did that come about?
I love my dogs.
How many have you got now?
We have 3 dogs. We have 3 black and tan Jack Russells: Nancy, Doty, and Dan the man. And I just absolutely love them. I find that they're a great. They have a great calming effect on me. I love bringing them out. I love bringing them to the St. Anne's Park. I love bringing them into situations where there are children, because I find, I find since I have begun my involvement in politics, there's one thing that will always kind of face you when you're heading out is, there's a lot of dogs out there, and people have a fear of dogs, where in fact, if people could become accustomed to knowing how dogs behave, the opposite would be the case. But certainly what I have learned over the last, my dogs, the dogs are 4 years old, and I'm involved with a guy out in he does agility training out in Malahide. I come across an awful lot of rescue dogs, Mike, and they're fabulous dogs.
Just abandoned or?
No, people who have taken dogs, so they've rescued the dogs. Yes. So the people who I would be mixing with are people who have taken rescue dogs. It's something that I was never really fully aware of.
What's the situation there? Is there people getting dogs and then getting a bit bored or going on holidays or whatever?
Well, there's a serious problem in this country with puppy farming, and that's really the problem. There are unfortunately there are people who just want to make money out of puppy farming, and there's nothing wrong with breeding and that. I've no difficulty with that, but the problem is the mass production and the abuse of animals. That is unacceptable, and I think the vast majority of people would agree with that it's unacceptable.
What's the situation? Because my understanding is that it is largely unregulated, or at least it's minimum regulation in that sense of the word, that there might be a few bylaws or rules, but it's not terribly well policed or inspected or anything like that. What's your understanding of the situation?
Well, it was a difficulty up until 2013 when the government thankfully introduced the Animal Welfare Act, and there are, I know, prosecutions being brought by the DSPCA, and they are before the courts with several cases currently. But I suppose I would prefer, and I really do welcome that legislation, but what I would like to see really is a change in attitude in society, where people could be brought, along the way of seeing that it is unacceptable that dogs would be maltreated. So the way around that really is to inform the public that if a person wants a pet, that they should make sure they go to a reputable person. And by that I mean you would need to see where the dog came from in the first instance. But really, ideally, anybody who's looking to take a pet, I would please ask them to go to Dogs Trust or Dogs Aid or any of those animal agencies or that are looking after animals to go there first, because it's my experience, and I see it in the last number of months, that a dog that's rescued seems to me to be very grateful that somebody would take it into their home, and it's a very, very pleasant experience to have a dog in your home, particularly for elderly people or for very young children. It's a very pleasant dynamic in a house if you have a dog, certainly in my experience.
Have you any thoughts on because over the years I've done various reports on dangerous dogs and so on and so forth. Have you any thoughts about the issue of people having particular types of breeds of dogs in urban areas? It's an area again that from time to time it makes a headline when a dog does the wrong thing, and often you may find that it's the dog isn't as to blame, and the dog still gets put down.
Most of the time, in fact I would argue all of the time, it's not the dog that's to blame, it's the owner of the dog. And certainly I used to have a kind of a very cautious regard for Staffordshire Terriers, whereas now I've learned that the Staffordshire Terrier is actually a very easily trained dog, but if it's in the wrong hands it can be trained in a very negative way and will give that breed of dog a bad name. But certainly there are certain breeds that need responsible owners, and most owners that I have come across who care about their animals are very, very responsible, and they keep complete control over their dogs. I could keep complete control over my dogs, and most people that I've come across do. Yes, there are situations where a dog gets into the wrong hands. That dog will not be a pleasant experience for anybody to meet, no more than the person who owns the dog. I wouldn't like to meet a person who was training a dog to be vicious, because the person who's training the dog, as far as I'm concerned, needs to be taken to task.
Yes, well, we have out in Clontarf we have a benchmark, as we say: the bigger the dog, the smaller the. Enough of that. Anyway, let's move along to Dublin Bay North. I mean, it's a whole new vista, as we say. Now, can you confirm that that you have put your name into the ring for the Fianna Fáil selection?
Well, I did seek nomination, and the progress is that you have to have a certain number of people nominating you to go before convention. So we have that procedure.
Surely
has
that
now
would not be the case in the case of Deirdre Heney.
Well, we that procedure has now been closed. So yes, I am officially nominated to go before convention. And at convention we will have all the party members of Dublin Bay North will all have a vote. Those people there will have a vote, and I will be looking for as many number ones as I possibly can, so that I can be selected.
Do we know at this stage how many other candidates are going?
There is 3 others, myself and 3 others. There's 4 going before convention.
And do we know how many the party are likely to put forward for the G16 or G late 15 as we?
Well, I argue that the election is going to be in November 2015.
That's what we're hearing.
So the sooner the better that we get our act together in Dublin Bay North. I think that the instruction will be that we should select one and maybe add one. Now that means that, for those who don't know, that party headquarters will give an instruction to the convention, and that will be, we will pick 2 or we will pick 1. I feel that it'll be the instruction from party headquarters will be that the convention should choose 1 candidate at convention. Hopefully that will be me. And then I think that they will add a second candidate, that there will be 2 candidates running in Dublin Bay North.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll be one of them.
Okay. That's, as I say, Dublin Bay North, it's quite interesting, because if you have a look, the 2 front runners would be not from the northern end of the constituency. Fianna Fáil weren't expected to do as well as you did in Clontarf, yet return 2 seats. Can Adrian Kavanagh is saying there's a Fianna Fáil seat up there. I mean, that is worth playing for at this stage.
Well, Fianna Fáil is not is in trouble in Dublin, of that there is no doubt. But certainly in a 5-seater, I see it that there is a possibility of Fianna Fáil taking a seat. I think it'll probably be the last seat that we will be fighting for. There's no doubt about it. It's a very hotly contested constituency, and there are very fine people who will be putting themselves forward for various parties. But there is no doubt that there is an argument there, and Adrian Kavanagh makes it, that there's a possibility of a Fianna Fáil seat in the last shake-up. For seats. Certainly, I've been an elected politician for Fianna Fáil for 15 years now. I've been successfully through 4 local election campaigns, and I have a track record in attracting votes because of the work that I do. I distribute a newsletter that I draft up and deliver myself with my party members and some of my family and friends, and I get great feedback from that, and as a result of that it generates a hell of a lot of work, and I find that that's how I learn about the issues of the day in my constituency. I ran in the general election in 2002. It was my first time ever running in a general election, and I came third in a 4-seater. And I came in on first preferences. I got 5,500 number ones, and I came in before the high profile Fine Gael outgoing TD at the time. So there's no issue about me being able to get votes. The issue is being given the opportunity to be out there on the ticket for Fianna Fáil. And if I'm given that opportunity, certainly I will fight very, very hard to make sure that Fianna Fáil comes back with a seat for 1 out of the 5 seats going forward in Dublin Bay North constituency, Mike.
Okay. Can I put something then to you, Deirdre? An observation that I've made over the years is that something that probably matters more to you than a lot of politicians I've come across is family. So when you look at formulating policy, how much does family come into that? And I'm talking about the generic family. I'm not talking about specific your own or somebody else's. How much, what we would call family issues?
Well, look at the way I operate in life, and I suppose it's because of the way I was reared, is, you know, you have to be fair and you have to share. So you have to be fair with people and look after your family, by extension look after your neighbours. If I could, one of the things that I have come across, certainly, and I've said it several times, in the last local elections I came across an issue that I have to say I hadn't really come across before, and that is people who are living with members of their family suffering with dementia. So what I mean by that is the carers of people suffering with dementia. So there are people suffering with Alzheimer's and people suffering with dementia, and I accept that you know, that is a very, very difficult condition to have to live with. But the people who are caring for those sufferers, I think, need to be acknowledged. They need to know that they're not on their own, and that society knows what they're doing. And I don't just mean financial acknowledgement, Mike. I mean just to say, we know you're there, you're not on your own, and what can we do? I think support groups, now I'm trying to push this, and I am going to push this at every avenue, at local level as far as I can, and if I get the opportunity to be elected to the Dáil, I'll certainly be pushing it at national level. But it's something that I think we're as a society, we're actually not fully aware of.
Sure. Can I ask you then to take something else on board, and that is that to a certain degree, and I've been a carer, that's why I'm talking from experience here, you get a certain amount of attention while you're actually doing the job, and then people tell you how great you are. When these things come to an end, and they always do, the person either gets taken into you can't do it anymore, or the person passes away. What I found then is that then you go from being a hero to a pariah, because people say, well, what have you been doing for the last 3 years, and you can't get a job, you can't get interviews. And I think there needs to be some consideration to giving to post-caring support, because that's what I found is that I couldn't even get an interview for about 3 or 4 years afterwards, because there was this nice big gap in my CV. How do you would you take consider that an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that's an important issue that people, including myself, you know, and a lot of people would you would forget about that person. So it's leading into what I'm saying about the carer of the person suffering with dementia, because it's it's a thing that goes on for a long time and it's kind of quiet.
Yeah.
We'll see you when you're outside with the person you're caring for, if you're bringing a person out, but we don't see you when you go inside, and we forget about you as a society now.
Okay.
I personally haven't had to deal with that in my own personal life, but I have very close friends who are caring for children who are in need of care, but also this the dementia end of things, and I think some form of support group or support mechanism needs to be put in place, whereby people who are caring for people with whatever the ailment is. My main concern, as I said, following the local elections, is people suffering with dementia, that they would be able to communicate with each other and share the problems and share the concerns and share the experiences that they have, because if they can share those experiences with the support of society as a whole, I think it makes it more bearable. It's not that anybody is going to be able to take the pain away, but sometimes when you can talk to a person or share something, you feel you're not on your own. And you know,
Can I put then to you something that's quite related to this, and that is the issue of people on trolleys. When I go turn on prime time and I see 65 people on a trolley in Beaumont, if that's your mother, you don't see the other 64. You see your mother. And what I always say to people is dignity is hugely important in these situations. Is that something, again, that would gel with your philosophy?
Yeah, well, look, I've come across the issue with the trolleys in Beaumont Hospital with both my parents, who are deceased now, but I have come across that issue. And, you know, it is ongoing for a long number of years, and I think the reason for it is because you can't plan an A&E, you know, and that's why it is kind of like left to the side all the time. It doesn't get enough attention from government, but also, Mike, from the medical profession, because the medical profession are very, very powerful, and they have a huge say in what resources goes into an A&E department, particularly in a busy hospital like Beaumont. So what we need all sides to come on board. It's not something that you can plan. It's not like elective surgery. So they can't plan it, and that's why it has, I think anyway, come to the situation that we are now, where it's still a problem after years and years and years of debating it and discussing it. So all sides, government and the medical profession and the patient representatives and local politicians and national politicians need to come on board to resolve that issue.
Unfortunately, Deirdre, we're not going to be able to discuss the issue of means testing lead in the home improvement grants for lead in the pipes. We'll have to come back to you on that one, but wish you all the very best in Dublin Bay North. Say hello to those dogs for us. And thank you to Paul on the desk, and don't go anywhere. Sean Brophy will be coming up with Midweek Music Miscellany. I'm Mick Fitz. I'll be back in a week's time. Take care.
Thank you.
There you go. Do you like that? Oh, I told you, it shoots through.